Hey everybody, in this video we're going to be going over the Analyze menu in SALT 24. So the Analyze menu is right up here, and as you can see there's tons of reports in this Analyze menu. So this is different than our database menu in that you're not going to select a database to match your sample to. You're not going to get standard deviation, mean, all those statistical measures that we look at from the database menu. You're just going to get straight raw data. So this can be really helpful in a couple scenarios. So one might be that you've run your database analysis, but you want additional reports. So there's some additional reports in each of the categories. It kind of drills down a little bit more specifically in each of the categories. So sometimes I'll run my database analysis and I might want to take another look at another additional report in the Analyze menu. The other scenario might be that you have collected a sample that's not going to match up and align with the SALT reference database elicitation protocols. So a couple examples that come to mind for me are maybe I'm working with someone, a little student with very delayed language, kind of minimal language. So really using the SALT conversational play-based sample comparison isn't going to work well, but I might want to just take a sample and keep collecting those and look at change over time using SALT. Another scenario might be maybe you're working with an older speaker who's maybe working on interview skills and you want to really look at their discourse skills. Are they interrupting? Are they abandoning? Are they overlapping with the other speakers? So there's a few different contexts which this Analyze menu can still be really useful even though we don't have that database comparison. So before we pop into the Analyze menu, let's look at a little bit at our analysis set. So I want to point out the analysis set, the word base, and then the transcript cut. So analysis set by default, SALT only uses complete and intelligible verbal utterances. So it's going to exclude utterances that are abandoned, interrupted. If there's one unintelligible word, it will kick out that whole sentence. It won't be included. And if you have any nonverbal utterances, those aren't going to be included. So there's a few more kind of options that you can pick from here. Another one might be yes, no. If you were asking a ton of yes, no questions and the speaker gave you one word yes, no responses, you may want to exclude those because that's going to kind of bring their MLU down. So there's a couple options. And then also if you have coded something, so maybe you coded the transcript for fluency, but you don't want to look at those utterances, you can put any code in there and it will be excluded. The flip side of that is maybe I only want to look at my fluency utterances that were coded, so I'm going to put that in there. So you have a little bit of way to manipulate your analysis set. So that's what SALT is going to use to calculate the measures. Okay, let's pop over to the word base. So by default, SALT is going to exclude parenthetical remarks. So those are things that don't align with the kind of the context of the sample. So if you're doing a narrative retell and the speaker says, oh, I forgot the character's name. What's this name? That's a parenthetical. That's not part of their narrative. So that would get coded as a parenthetical. You also have the option to, if you have a word code, same ideas in the analysis set. You would just type in the code and that will get excluded. Or, the opposite, include only words with that specific code that you're entering. So just know that that's an option that is really, if you're looking at something very specific, this can be handy. Let's go over to the transcript cut. So again, what this is going to do is it's going to manipulate which utterances are going to be included so you can cut your transcript. Default, we're going to go beginning as our start point, end of transcript as our end point. You can, however, look at utterance number. So maybe the first 10 utterances, the child wasn't really talking, so maybe I want to start at utterance 10 and then go to the end of the transcript. Or I could say, oh, I want to go utterance 10 through, whatever it's going to be, 60. So I get my 50 utterances, for example. So you can manipulate it that way. There's some other options. You can do timing. If you thought, oh my gosh, the first 5 minutes were really rough, we should start it in 5 minutes. So you can do that. And then you can also, if you've inserted a code, maybe you coded it specifically and you want your transcript to start at that specific point, you can do that. Go back to the default. And if you come over to here, so this side says content target, so you can go number of utterances. You can go number of words. So your transcript cut will stop, if you want the first 50 utterances, and then it will cut there. You can also do elapsed time. So just know that those buttons are there. It's pretty quick to go in if you want to look at specific segments of your transcript. Okay, so let's dig into the Analyze menu. So this is organized. We have overview and then utterances and then by language domain. So let's run a few. This is a sample. It's a 5-month-old, and it's a play-based sample. So let's pull up a standard measures report. And here's our kind of cover sheet. So this is going to cover all of our language domains. So we have our transcript length, and we've got the child and examiner listed here. So the child had 59 total utterances and the examiner had 64. So that's actually pretty good, pretty balanced as far as who's doing the talking in that sample, as we would want it to be in a play-based elicitation. The analysis set is the default, the complete and intelligible verbal utterances. And then you can look at that. So then what that did is it narrowed it down to 47. So some of those utterances were tossed out for one of those reasons. They either weren't complete, they had an unintelligible segment, or maybe it was just a nonverbal, like a gesture or something. Okay, next section is intelligibility. So we get that in utterances and words. Syntax and morphology includes mean length of utterances. That's listed in words and morphemes. We also have percent utterances with verbs and then mean verbs per utterance. So we can look at those measures. Semantics, so number of total words, number of different words, and then the moving average number of total words, number of different words, and also moving average type token ratio. And this is a good time to point out the help menu. So if you don't know what the moving average number of different word measure, and kind of like, what does that mean? You can go up to the F1, and what this will do, the help menu, will give you the measures. We can go in here. There we go. Scroll down a little bit. So this will give you the measures and then the definition. So the moving average estimates number of different words and type token using a moving window. So what that does is it looks at, it'll take utterance 1 through 100, then it's utterance 2 through 101, so it kind of evens out the averages. It's just a quick calculation to kind of give you more of an average. So any questions that you have on the measures, just hit that F1 button and it'll define it for you. Okay, and then discourse measures, so mean turn length in utterances and words, response to questions, response to intonation prompts. This is dash, there weren't any. And then utterances with overlapping speech, and then percent utterances that were interrupted. So verbal facility, that's words per minute, pause times, and maze words. So recall that mazes are those repetitions, false starts, revisions, and filled pauses. So we look at that as percent of total words, and then also abandoned utterances. And then the last section is the errors. So sometimes errors, they're usually pretty interesting to look at. Can we find a pattern? So that kind of tells us that he had percent utterances with errors was 11%. So too bad on that. Okay, so let's go back up to the Analyze menu. Next report that I'll point out is the performance report. So what this is going to do is it pulls measures from all of these different reports and then puts them into a narrative report that you can just copy and paste into your diagnostic or your electronic medical record system. So it's going to ask you how you want to label your speaker. So you can go first name Jeremy, and then it asks for your pronouns. And then we get this. So you can highlight this and copy and paste. And this, of course, is editable. You can go in and change this, like he participated, whatever you want to say there. So you can go ahead and edit this. If there's any like clinical notes, that's not going to be included here, but your impressions and so forth. But it's a nice kind of just structures your report, and then your language sample data is already kind of written up for you. So you can either copy and paste here, or you can click on the little copy to the clipboard. for that. So keep that in mind. That'll save you a ton of time. Okay, and then let's do just a few more reports here. So I'm going to pull the semantic summary. So it's vocabulary. So that gives us number of bound morphemes, number of different bound morphemes, and then all those measures that we talked about, like number of total words in different words. Let's look at word root tables. So I'm going to do table word root. We'll expand by words, and then we'll take the defaults. Okay, so this can kind of be a nice report if you're looking at kind of very early language development, if you want to get specific in which words they have. So this literally just gives you every root word that they're using in alphabetical order. So that one I actually like with my preschool population, kind of see how they're doing on that. So it's a great report. That would be additional. Okay, let's see. We can also go into the grammatical categories. I like this one as well because you can look at, what types of words are they using. So it'll say initiators, probably more grammatical information that you never want to know. But, adjectives, nouns, are they using those? I've had a lot of kids on caseload where it's like, oh my gosh, they're not using any verbs. When I pull this up, like their verbs are just not there. So then we'll target that in therapy, for example. So that's a really great report to have. If you've done a conversational sample, it'll give you your discourse summary. That might be a good one to run. Let's go down to the omissions and error codes. Okay. So then what this is going to do is it's going to tell you every word that they omitted. So if it's an asterisk and then a word, that word was omitted. So he said, I'm quite sure, and he meant I'm not quite sure. He omitted the word not on that. And then we can kind of see, is there a pattern in the errors? So he had an error on the pronoun. He said yours instead of yours. And then this one was coded. He'd say egg instead of an egg. So it's probably not the biggest deal in the world, but it's good to know. And then utterance level errors. Usually it's like if there's 3 or more little errors, or if there's a syntax error in their sentence, it will get coded. So this one he said, you have for breakfast fried eggs. So that's a syntax problem on that one. And he said, you gonna have bacon. So that the error report, I print that every single time. Let's look at those errors. What are they doing with those? Okay. And then you can also do, let's grab one more. Let's do the code summary. This would be good if you've done a coding scheme. So if you're looking at something very specific, this will bring all of the codes up. So the error codes, and then Jeremy's sample, this one was coded for verbs, so future, past, and present tense. So that might be an example of something you're targeting in therapy, or like a lot of times I'll be working on irregulars. I could go in and code those irregular verbs or when it should have been, and then bring up the code summary to kind of see how they're progressing. Okay, well, hopefully that gives you kind of the rundown of how to use the Analyze menu. Thanks so much for listening.